Good evening and welcome to the Minions of the Zoo. This is episode 1252, and with us tonight are Dr. Functional.
It's actually THUR functional now.
THUR Functional.
Hey.
SkepTok.
Hi, everybody.
Serenity Star 13.
Hello.
And I think Sora will be with us in a moment. She had to step away. But how
do I get marked tardy?
No,
Yes.
You made it in time.
At the buzzer.
One of the few phrases I really sort of enjoyed from studying German is Pünktlichkeit ist alles, which is punctuality is everything. I know, what a surprise that the Germans would have that phrase.
That does not sound like.
Yeah, actually, that literally does not translate into Italian.
I'm not surprised.
Yes, Pünktlichkeit. Pünktlichkeit. Excellent word. Yeah, I mean, while we're looking up words in German, you can also look up Kunstwollen. That's a good one, which is basically the drive toward art, or basically.
Oh, I thought it was losing your virginity.
No. It's called Kunstwollen, and it simply means that you want art. You're attracted to art. You have a passion for art.
Yeah,
and,
Skep, I think you're talking about Kunstlichen.
Yes. But yeah, my German teacher had a story that he told about that particular word when he was teaching in upstate New York, and he had a bunch of really sharp students. And this one girl said, well, I guess I'm not going to tell the guy's name, but he said, Herr Professor, was bedeutet Kunstwollen? And one of the guys in the back of the room said, I don't know, but if you've got it, stay away from me. Yes.
Nice.
It's off to a super classy start for Minions tonight. Let's see who is
Just
in.
who we are.
Nobody who
is in,
speaks
chat
German can be a
tonight.
bad person.
Charming Cthulhu. Howdy. Czech is here.
Hello, Chick.
Toss is here. Hey, I thought you had to work, Toss. Oh, that's right. You're probably watching from work. Never mind. Mr. Yes, Geodes, Random American. Okay, good. We've already started.
Hi,
with
Random.
9.
I think Sora's
so-
back.
Hey, Sora. No.
Hello. I thought I heard her. Oh, there she is.
Hello.
I thought I heard noise. I was like, wait a minute.
So, does anybody wish to unburden themselves before the show?
Just really quickly, as a point of information, because I talked about it on my show, the new arrivals to my granddaughter's place are doing very well, and your concerns and good wishes and prayers are deeply appreciated, and all is well. Just wanted to pass that on.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. Anybody else?
Other than me living in an actual police state where we're now one step removed from me having to wear a yellow star on my arm.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm okay.
It's like masks. Don't put up a fight. Just put it on.
Yeah. Shh, just go with it. Yeah.
I mean, luckily, the rumor mill is that they are going to be walking that back come Monday, but we'll see. I don't think it went. I don't think the news of it went down as smoothly as they were hoping. I think there was a lot of pushback, so we'll see.
Oh, yeah.
And on not just on a local scale, but on an international scale, like the entire world kind of went, "Wait, what? You said you're doing the quiet part out loud."
And the Germans went, motherfucker, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think the whole honeymoon period for all this BS is kind of over.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, at first it was, I'm scared, Daddy protect me. And then we all just said, here, take all of the things and just make it all better. And people went along with that for a while. And then it got dumber and dumber and dumber. It's like, what do you mean I can't play on the jungle gym? Or my kids can't use the slide at the park? Well, might have COVID. Really? In the sunlight? It's going to have... Yeah, it's just all ridiculous. And they're just... I think they're starting to feel their grip over people slowly slipping away.
Well, I mean, it doesn't help that Texas and Idaho, Iowa, Ohio, and a few other states have started to pull their mask mandates back, and then you have the rest of
Florida.
the world. And Florida never did, I don't think. But
Florida never really climbed on.
But it's like in the rest of the world, it's like, motherfuckers say what? Their
Yeah.
cases are dropping. What the fuck? Why are we still doing this?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why that might be the case.
Oh, yeah.
You know, some people say that they actually have a lot more herd immunity from a lot of people having low-grade cases of it that just we don't have documentation of.
Yeah.
And
Well-
those who basically didn't lock down got a lot closer to herd immunity a lot earlier.
Well, it's
That's
like
one
I
of the arguments.
think there was the article that stated that they were finding antibodies for COVID back like before, like back in 2019, long before they thought it was even supposed to be here.
Fall of 2019, yeah, or sort of late fall, early winter.
Yeah,
type
when we
stuff.
were
There's
starting
some
to-
that goes back to I
yeah.
think October
really? I
or
missed that.
September.
Oh yeah, that like they were talking about that, and I was like, "See, I thought I had COVID, you sons of bitches."
Yeah, that was the same day there was the pangolin special at the wet market. I think.
Yeah.
Started detecting all this crap.
Hey,
my
Mom,
double
that's
spicy.
great, pangolin. Mm-mm.
Did any of you see the pandemic special for South Park?
No,
No,
I didn't even
okay,
know
so
they
it's just-
had one.
Okay, so it's just me then.
I feel like
yeah.
I'm watching it in real life, but
I don't
Go-
feel like
go
I
ahead.
can even really say what happened in the pandemic special, but yeah, you should definitely check that out if you're in
Okay,
the mood for
thank
some
you.
edgy humor.
You
Oh,
flappy-headed asshole. Did you?
Well,
what
let's
did you
see.
just call me? You, sir, are a racist.
yes. Well, I actually saw something which
Great
I haven't
movie.
really seen in a while. Where I don't know if I've ever seen this. I was at my local market, which we shall not name, and it's a small market, but it's really, really fantastic. And I love my local market. I've been going there ever since I was a little kid.
I hear the
And,
pangolin is amazing.
The people there are super nice, and it has that kind of small market thing going on where, you know, they
Yeah.
don't have a lot of check stands, but people were waiting to check out, and it was closer to the beginning of the day. I went there right after I got my second COVID shot, just to sort of stock up on comfort food, you know, just in case the worst happened.
He's cool.
And there was this woman. She was like pretty tall, probably around 60, wearing like a pink tracksuit, and she was one of those horrible Karens. I've never run into one at this
Lord.
market because things were just sort of disorganized. All the people were milling about trying to figure out, should we have one line or multiple lines? And I don't know, but the point is that people normally,
Spam.
in amidst all of the BS of waiting and stuff, don't get upset about it. They just sort of talk to each other.
Yeah.
It's super friendly. It's super chill. Except for this woman who's like the first time I've ever seen this Karen came in and was just like, they should only have one line. They don't know what they're doing. And I'm just like, holy crap, where the hell how did you slip through whatever the filter is at the door?
Excuse me.
It keeps people like you out.
Did you not know this was a no Karen zone? I'm so sorry you can't be here.
Holding up the
You're-
flashcards next to
You're an
people who walk
officious
in.
bitch.
That's the right hair.
Yeah. It must really suck to have that be your name, you know, and not be one
Oh
of them.
God, yeah.
Mm.
Like they're one of the actually like the big like hippie people who's just like free love, man. And they get
I
called.
do have one friend named Karen, and she kind of takes it in stride. Like, she's got a good sense of humor, but I don't know how long she's going to be able to keep that up if it keeps being
Get
such
worse.
a. Yeah.
I don't blame her. I'd get pissed too. I'm like,
'Cause
motherfucker.
she's so
Yeah.
totally not a Karen.
Yeah.
She's actually very politically ignorant by choice, and she's just a happy-go-lucky kind of small world life, which fine, you know, that's her right.
Respect. Respect.
You know,
Let's
you were saying though about the slipping of the authoritarian glove, Harry,
Mhm.
and with what's been going on with things like, you know, the Democrats being excited about packing the court and adding DC as a state, and doing all this, you know, what they fancy is productive progressive surgery on the mechanisms by which we govern ourselves and by which social interaction they believe they can control and direct. And people like that woman who is the head of the BLM group spending millions of dollars on estates that she says she's going to give to her family.
Oh, can you hold that thought for a moment?
Certainly.
Because it sounds like we're getting into. I want to just read through this thing, and then we can spend the next 10 minutes doing what you're about to do. So just think of this
Sure.
for a second. So I have this new thing which I've started, which is this week's quick news recap. And this is a list of all the things that people have been talking about that we're not really going to talk about that much tonight. Just to sort of go, we acknowledge that these things exist. However, this is not the focus of tonight's show, either because it's something that's already been talked about or whatever. But this gives us a chance just to go, okay, do what Skep's about to do.
Yeah.
Item one is the Democrats are super excited about packing the courts. This is my writing, of course. Number two, a BLM founder goes on a real estate buying spree. Item three, drug companies salivate at possibility of new strains of coronavirus will create need for ongoing vaccinations. Back to you, Skep.
Well, I was actually using all that just as prologue to make the statement that I think the other side is believing that it's safe enough to just admit that this is nothing but a hypocritical power grab, and they're going to do what the hell they want when they want right now. That was particularly the case with the BLM founder buying millions of dollars of real estate with money that she clearly embezzled from her own nonprofit organization. Now, the wonderful thing about this is that the powers that be need to decide, since they are facing a straight out of a law school textbook black letter law case of embezzlement and fraud, that somebody has got to go bell that cat. Somebody has got to go after her and prosecute her for essentially robbing people. It's a form of theft. It's an illegal taking. It is an illegal enterprise to run. It's done in bad faith. It's done fraudulently. The misrepresentations, the things that gnaw at the social connectors that underpin our system of commerce and faith in nonprofit associations and things like that. The representations that you may reasonably take as true, when you make those fraudulently, you are breaking the law. And so she is going to have to be prosecuted. Someone is going to have to do that. Or if they don't, then what that will be is an admission that they're just saying, no, screw it. We're done playing around. We're going to take what we want when we want it, and we are essentially going to be with respect to a group of people, white people, who we consider to be in the majority, privileged, all this other stuff. We can essentially commit crimes against them, and we can do so with impunity. Whether it's shooting Ashley Babbitt or ripping off even their own people, largely for millions of dollars for their own personal enrichment. I think when you start to see things like that, one of two things is happening. It's, as you say, Harry, either the authoritarian gloves are slipping off, and the machinery of that kind of essentially fascistic groups of people, those groups are starting to tear themselves apart, and now they're just grabbing for the loot, or they believe that the position is so secure, so unshakable, that they are going to do anything they want. The Robespierre position, and we know what happened to Robespierre. He got his head cut off.
Do you happen to know how they're organized as a charity? They're not a nonprofit.
BLM is it's like most of those things. There's a nonprofit shell that has a relationship with, I believe it is a political action committee.
Yeah, because the political action committee would be necessary, because a 403B can't typically get involved in political activity, and they're so brazenly political it's not even funny.
Right.
So any donations that you make to them are not tax deductible, and it's not going to go through the same charity navigator stuff that we're all used to.
Well, here's
salaries they pay. Hold on a second.
Okay.
As far as what salaries they pay,
yeah,
I don't think there's any limitation to that. And I don't know if in a pack they even have to disclose it.
It's not one organization, Harry. That's what I'm saying. It's more than one organization with very similar names. And I'm actually I'm doing research while I'm talking, which is why my thoughts sound even more disorganized than they usually do, which is to say considerably. But the BLM charity organization is the that's the Black Lives Matter, and that's the organization that what they say leads the Black Lives Matter movement. The movement part, and it has a different name, and that's what I'm looking for, is the one that's the actual political action committee. And so when you go I keep going to the action site, which is not what I want. God, this is a really obnoxious site, by the way. Everybody should check it out. Join the movement to fight for freedom, liberation, and justice by signing up for updates, blah, blah. And wearing our dope official gear. Excellent. Anyway.
I think it's just called the Black Lives Matter Pack.
Yeah,
and that's the one where Patrice Colors is.
I think it is. I think it is, but
they have two. They have the pack, and then they have a thing that's called the Working Families Party.
Oh, and then they have partnerships at Black Lives Matter. That's what I was looking for. It's the partnerships that they form with those, and that they invest their name, their goodwill, which is essentially their name and the value of their name, and their organization, and you invest money, and that's where they get their money.
Mm-hmm. And there's different terrorist cells. I mean, chapters. So like BLM Chicago is a different entity from BLM Georgia.
The action groups are different from the local, what amount to chapters, and they have levels of. This is like the what is it? The Sunrise Project. It's a very similar an organization to the Sunrise Project, and all this stuff comes straight out of a book called Rules for Radicals, and they're both organized the same way, where you have a semi-legitimate looking organization, and then you have the terror cells that you're referring to, Dr. Functional, that are the action groups, and Sunrise has those too, and those are off the books. You have to join the main group, and then they get to know you, they vet you, and so forth, and then you'll be funneled into an action group, and you can go about as deep as you want to in that. And of course, most of these assholes, their egos are much bigger than their brains, and so they go straight for the violent shit and get their asses kicked. But anyway, But that's the stuff we're not going to talk about, right, Harry?
Yeah, that's the 10 minutes I allocate just to talk about the obvious stuff. But
let's get to the good stuff now.
Let's get to the good stuff. Oh, if only we had all good stuff. Some of it's just rage fuel for me.
Yeah.
So this was something that Functional put forward, and I know Skep's going to have a few things to say about this, as well as me. Do you want to talk about this a bit, Functional?
Sure. I mean, I've kind of become the unofficial Chinese correspondent or China correspondent. So we know that a lot of currency was typically backed by gold. And just to give a short little synopsis of what's been going on globally, is when the pandemic hit, a lot of people, especially in the United States, bought up gold. China has had a sort of soft cap on how much they buy each year, but they basically blew the roof off of that cap recently. And with that, everybody of buying gold, they kind of slowed down, but it's picking up again. So because they're such a rich country, but a heavy importer of oil, petroleum, it looks like they're making the move to have a large, vast gold reserve.
Is this in response to what they did in 2018? You remember when the Chinese launched that gold-backed yuan-denominated oil futures deal, and it was like a commodities contract, and because essentially as you say, they're huge consumers of foreign oil, which means that in the commodities business, they go long on oil. What they want to do is lock price. How do they lock price? Well, to lock price in the commodities business, you have to have money. How do they do that? Well, they have the yuan. Well, what's the yuan worth? Well, the yuan is worth what, it's the Federal Reserve note as opposed to the renminbi in China, which is the actual dollar, dollar.
Mhm.
But think of the yuan as a certificate that says Federal Reserve note. When things are, people think that the yuan is the unit of money in China. It's not. The renminbi is. The yuan, you will never see anything priced in, selling a curio for 25 yuan. It'll be 25 renminbi. Now, 1 renminbi equals 1 yuan, so it's a little bit hard to understand. But the government, since it does all of its international stuff in one of the 2 types of yuan, and this is where Chinese money gets really funny, because there's 2 kinds of yuan. There's the yuan that it uses internationally, which is the yuan Hong Kong. And then there's the yuan China that they use internally in China. They have a very controlled currency with inside China, and they like to keep that separate from their external dealings. But how to pay for all this foreign oil, how to lock prices so that they didn't end up, getting bankrupted every time that something bad happened in the Middle East, right? Mm-hmm. And so they've got this problem. So what they did was they launched a gold-backed yuan denominated oils futures contract, essentially, and the contracts were priced in yuan, but they were convertible to, wait for it, gold. So that was essentially a basement foundation to let China say that, in effect, the yuan Hong Kong, not the yuan China, but the yuan Hong Kong, was a gold-based currency. And, of course, what they advertise to their people is the yuan is good as gold. We've got tons and tons of gold, and they do own, the country does own a whole bunch of gold.
Oh, yeah.
That they're buying. Plus, the citizens of China have been always able to own gold, and they buy gold at the drop of a hat. They're
especially in the last 2 decades with their
by
economy.
far the most gold-owning population of any country in the world is China. So there's lots and lots of gold there. Plus, don't they mine like a third of the 2,500 tons of gold that get mined every year? Don't they do like 700 or 800 tons themselves?
It's something close to that, yeah.
Yeah,
it's exploded in the last
and they're pulling it out of Africa, by the way.
I was just about to say, because they've made inroads into Eastern Africa,
Pakistan,
and the Pakistani deals that they've made.
Right.
And it's funny that you mention all that. Not to get too, because you've done a good job, but just last week, China unleashed a central bank digital currency, first country to really do that. And so what they're doing is they're going to be tying that directly to the price of gold.
Right.
So that's
actually going to be based on. It's going to be based on this futures contract. It's going to be based on the value of that futures contract. That's actually what they're using it for. Yeah.
As opposed to our money, which is not based on anything other than our willingness to not print it.
The faith and confidence of the United States government headed by Joe Biden.
Yeah, right. So that kind of makes you scared, because I mean that's not when you're in such a precarious financial position against your
Come
biggest
on, man.
rival.
Joe's not going to print money just because it's politically convenient. Come on, man.
I accidentally stumbled across a, how every now and then YouTube will autoplay and play something else. And it started playing a clip of Tucker Carlson saying that, Biden's going to do yet another multi-trillion-dollar spending program. And it took me a while to realize that it was a 2-week-old clip, because it sounded perfectly legit today. Oh, good, we're going to do another one. Fine. I was just thinking, there was at no point did I think, that couldn't possibly happen, because I just figured, what's the next one going to be after the infrastructure one?
Yeah.
So, okay, question.
Yes.
the amount of gold a country has, is that the actual, or is it like also called gold holdings? Like what's like, is it just gold
This is
holdings?
a really good question, and it's
Because
got a big answer.
yeah, because that's the thing I'm curious about. Because like, if you try to look any of this stuff up, you get 5,000 different answers. So it's like I was curious about in case anybody.
Not really. Not really. You can find an answer to it. You just have to know where to look.
You have to ask the right question.
You have to ask the right question, basically, and you have to ask it in the right place.
Yeah.
But functional. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to short hop your question.
No, I'm glad you understood the question. I don't really understand the question.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I know. I asked one that's.
I know.
hard.
No, I just need to frame. I just need to frame it. Okay. If you took all of the gold that has ever been mined out of the ground, it would fit into a cube 60 feet on a side, 60 by 60 by 60 feet. All of the gold ever pulled out of the ground would fit into that cube.
Okay.
Of the known reserves that are in the ground, you could add 25% of that cube more onto that cube. Okay. So here's the deal. And there are anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 tons of gold. I think there's 200,000. I think that represents 200,000 tons of gold in the history of mankind, and there are about 3,000 tons of gold mined every year. So that's the whole big gold pot. That's the pot of gold that is completely owned by the world. So when someone owns a gold certificate, when somebody goes to Swiss Bank or Credit Suisse and says, I want to buy a gold certificate that represents 1 troy ounce of gold, there is literally a troy ounce of gold owned by somebody that backs that certificate. Okay. That way, the people, the gnomes of Zurich, they call them, keep the price of gold from inflating. Now, of course, there are fraudulent certificates around, but that doesn't really affect the gold market or the price of gold, because those are rip-off things that are pretty soon discovered. But essentially, when you see a gold-backed certificate, okay, and I'm going to explain something else in just a second that's different from that. But when you see a gold-backed certificate, that's actually backed by the amount of gold that is stated on that certificate. Okay. Now, gold futures are a different story. Gold futures mean that you think the price of gold is either going to go up or it's going to go down. If you think it's going to go up, you go long gold. That is to say that you buy gold now and hold it. And since the price will go up, the price you paid now will be less than the price you sell it for, and you'll make a profit. Right. If you think it's going down, you promise delivery, but don't buy. And then, so you get your money now. You essentially sell it short and borrow the money to do that. And so you pay interest on that money. But if the price declines enough, you will make enough by getting to buy at the cheaper price later on. Provide the gold. Obviously, there's an infinite risk in doing that, since there's no theoretical limit to the increase of price that could happen. So but that's different. And that does not inflate or deflate gold, in terms of changing the apparent amount. And I think that was the nuts and bolts of your question was, are there a bunch of pieces of paper flying around that say that they are worth gold, that there is not enough gold to cover? And that is simply not true. Effectively not true. There's some minor exceptions. We could talk about this subject all night, and believe me, I'm capable of doing it. But that's the nuts and bolts of it right there, in answer to your question.
Okay. Because like like I said, I was running around like looking at who has tonnage and who has the largest tonnage and gold and all that kind of stuff. And it's China disclosed theirs for the first time in like 6 years, not too long ago. I think it was this year, in fact. Let me go back.
Well, that just means they're not selling any gold.
No. It's just I was looking at the actual percentage of the reserves and the tonnage that they have in holdings, and I was just seeing what countries were what and like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, to give you some perspective, last year, I think in the last year, India bought about 160 tons worth of gold. China bought about 145.
Yeah, they jumped
But-
57% in 6 years.
But in the next 2 to 3 months, China is looking to import 150 more tons. So what they bought in the last year and a bit, they want to now double that basically in the next 2 months.
Yeah.
And with India kind of also being hoarding gold and the tensions going on there, we circle back to this is the kind of thing that happens before open war.
Okay, and guys, just so
Not saying that there is, but it is kind of lending to that thing where this is stuff that typically happens before that.
Okay,
Sorry,
something important to remember when you're talking about a ton of gold. You were talking about $50 million.
Yeah.
Effectively, that is about $50 million. Just so to give people something they can hold on to, because a ton of gold, what is a ton of gold? Unless you know the dollar value of it, and I think it's like 48 million or something like that.
And a ton of gold weighs more than a ton of butter.
All right. Anyway, it was just.
I had to inject some silliness into something
I know.
serious.
You're good.
No, you're supposed to say a ton of helium, but anyway.
Oh, dang it. But
weight versus mass. What's
So, next question.
Metric or
There's a thing that I keep running into, and I can't find any other info on it, and because once again, I'm probably not asking the right questions to the Google machine. But what is the International Monetary Fund? Anybody have any idea what that is?
Well, yeah. I mean, what is the IMF?
Like I don't want to go to the Wikipedia page, so.
Well, the
Is
Wikipedia page can be a good place to find. Just look at where their articles come from and start culling through those, and that's where you throw out the bullshit.
Gotcha.
But the International Monetary Fund is an international financial institution that essentially a bunch of UN. It's a UN type organization that has representatives from God. I would think virtually every country that's in the UN is probably represented on the IMF Council, and what they want to do is they want to make sure that financial stability throughout the world is good, that monetary systems can interact correctly and smoothly with one another, that agreements and understandings that need to be made and maintained in order to have international trade proceed in a way that is mutually beneficial to the members happens, and essentially to foster economic development and economic goodness for everybody. It's really got some pretty high flying things. It is closely allied, I would say, allied is the right word, with something called the World Bank. And the World Bank is kind of the piggy bank, which is, and it's heavily funded by the United States.
Yeah.
I have some real opinions about that. But anyway, there was something called the Bretton Woods Conference that was like in the 40s, where the IMF was essentially started, and I think it was called the United Nations Monetary Fund or something. And anyway, this conference was held, and that was to just regulate international monetary transactions, and to do things like prevent what happened in post-World War II Germany from happening to other places. They were miserable failures at that, because governments are filled with scoundrels.
Yeah.
But that was at least what they wanted to do. And the IMF is kind of the descendant of the council that I can't remember its name, that came out of the Bretton Woods Agreement.
Okay. Because I found a list of the holdings as of 2017, and IMF holds 2,814 tons in gold holdings.
Yeah.
And America's above 8,000. That's the reason why I was curious. I was like,
$1
everybody
billion
else.
and change.
Yeah.
It's just lunch
And it's constantly
Just lunch money for
fluctuating.
those guys, by
Well,
the
yeah,
way.
it's just I was curious because it's the only one that's not a country on here.
Yeah.
On the list. That's the reason I was like, who the fuck are these people?
Yeah. In my mind, I tend to think of the IMF and the World Bank as just basically being Romulus and Remus, and they kind of
Nice.
they kind of just sort of fit together in my head. We talked about in a previous show the pandemic bonds, which were really interesting, which was a way they were basically raising money, and then if there wasn't a pandemic, they were paying people back the money that they didn't use plus extra,
Yeah.
for taking on the risk of this thing. It was a really interesting story, but that was a past episode of the Saturday Minion stream. Just to sort of keep things on track, because we covered a lot of ground in the last 20 minutes. That was
So I'm sorry about that. I need to.
No.
I know I need
No,
to shut
you-
up.
No.
you're fine.
That's why I bring up this stuff, because you know a lot more about the economic side than I do.
Okay,
No,
but I don't want
You're
to.
fine. If you had needed to stop talking, I would have said something.
Okay.
Yeah.
You would have pushed the
Don't
button,
be-
the
don't
big
be
red
afraid.
button.
Yeah.
And so the TLDR is gold is at a low. People are buying gold.
Yeah, the TLDR is that if we want the petrodollar to continue to be a thing, we need to stop printing damn money, because it's only because we're a bunch of idiots who found the printing press that we were even having this conversation, because there would be no need to replace the dollar as the petrodollar. Anyway, let's get into the next topic, which is we were very, very right. So incredibly right that within 24 hours of our last show, when we were talking about Iran, an accident or sabotage or something happened at their Happy Centrifuge plant.
Accident. Wink, wink.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not often that we're so good at Minions of predicting what's going to happen in the future that it happens less than 24 hours later.
Dun, dun,
But
dun.
yeah, a nuclear facility in Iran was hit by sabotage a day after it unveiled new uranium enrichment equipment, the country's top nuclear official says. And you can trust the Iranian nuclear officials. Whether it was MotZ, whether it was an accident, whether it was sabotage, I don't know. And none of us honestly know. It could have
Yeah.
been
No.
it could have been any one of those things.
Someone spilled their tea over a keyboard.
Ahmed, no!
That could do it.
Yeah. But I do love the fact that Israel's like, no, it was us. Which I don't blame them for taking credit if Iran's not gonna own up to who did it.
Cohen, the guy who's in charge of MotZ, he's almost a lame duck. He's almost out of office, and that's actually an office that is, I don't know if it's elected or appointed, but it has like a term limit to it. So they're about to rotate him out. Everybody thought he had short timers attitude, and he was just marking time and so forth. And he pulls off this huge op with like 60 days to go before he's going to be cashiered out of that job and get another job in government. Ostensibly.
Yeah.
And I just think that just shows that the Israelis have such balls. They're just so amazing, and that's why I love, one of the reasons that I love that little country.
Well, it's like the good version of Napoleon syndrome. Like it's like, fuck it, we're tiny, let's do this, and they
Tiny
just
little
go.
country, huge fucking balls.
Yeah,
Let me just
I
knock
mean,
you around my balls.
they've also got allies with some of the best militaries in the world, so they can
Us. That's
Yeah,
it, just
yeah.
us.
no,
and I mean, it is if we're going down that route, it is in the U.S. the West's interest to not have Iran be
to have a
producing nuclear
democracy.
weapons.
Have a
Oh, yeah.
democracy.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, let me re-vector us back to the topic at hand, which is
All right, but
you
let
were
me
right.
I have a good line to deliver, and let me deliver my line.
Okay.
Incredible military power, itty bitty living space.
Okay, so what did we say? We said that the end goal, if they have any brains at all, the Iranians do, and I'm not claiming that the Iranians are stupid by any stretch of the imagination. They're not stupid. They're just kind of crazy. The next thing to happen was this came out in the news. European powers warn Iran over fate of talks after 60% enrichment move. Yes, they very sternly wagged their finger in the direction of Tehran.
Don't
said,
you
"Bad
do
Tehran.
it?
Don't you do it." It's like, because we were warning you. And this, of course, amounts to absolutely nothing. All this was, as I said, a move to get them to the negotiating table where they can bring the giant suitcases full of money, or in this case, pallets of money that are dropped off the back of a military aircraft.
That's exactly.
Okay, we just printed some.
Yeah, so the European power is very, very concerned about the marginal improvement in the uranium refining capability of the Iranians, and then slow Biden decided that he wanted a piece of the action too. So let's see.
When you say
So Biden says Iran enriching uranium at 60% is not helpful, but is pleased country engaging in indirect talks. Well, of course you have to engage in indirect talks, because otherwise, how is the shakedown going to take place? It's hard not to be cynical.
Send in
about
Hunter.
this. But everything that we said has already essentially come true within the last week. So I think we outdid ourselves last Saturday.
I think that Joe Biden should go to Iran and say, would you like to buy some antivirus software? That's a little bit of an inside joke there, but
yeah. Well, I'm still trying to fathom why that facility would be connected to the internet.
Yeah.
yeah.
Why would you have wire, or why would that not be in a Faraday cage with it encased in plastic?
Lead shielding.
Like it's like
Copper shielding, really.
Copper shielding, yeah.
Well, there are ways to do this to basically disconnect it from the network without disconnecting it from the network, without boring people. But you can essentially set up proxies for things like email and stuff like that, and not allow them to basically SSH or telnet into the Arduino that they've got controlling their janky ratchet centrifuges.
But how am I supposed to play Raid Shadow Legends when I'm trying in between enrichments? Come on, guys. We need the internet.
We don't mention Raid Shadow Legends because they don't sponsor us.
Hint, hint. Raid Shadow Legends.
Yeah, that looks like
You
a
could
fun
be
game, actually.
Hitting
But I
that
don't really
fat
do
demo
that sort of
on
stuff.
Minions of the Zoo. Give me a
Never played
call.
That's right. Oh God. Let's
Oh,
see.
Iran, you're so predictable.
So the next thing, I looked at this morning and I just said to myself, "What you talking about, Willis?" I was really taken aback by this. FBI acts to remove backdoors from hacked Microsoft Exchange servers.
Microsoft Exchange servers have a security problem. Are you
Get
kidding?
going.
FBI, so brace yourselves. The FBI has executed a court-authorized operation to remove malicious backdoor web shells from hundreds of Microsoft Exchange email servers targeted in the recent spate of attacks. Now, this was a series of Chinese attacks from the beginning of March. Okay. The attacks exploited 4 zero-day vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange, collectively referred to as doesn't really matter for this case, that were first exploited by Chinese state-sponsored threat actors known as Hafnium. Even conservative estimates by security experts, such as ESET, pinned the number of compromised servers at over 5,000. Now, this is basically our government is hacking into U.S. servers that they think have already been hacked into. They're fixing the problem for people and then sending them an email after the fact to let them know, oh, by the way, we white hat hacked into your server and fixed it for you.
Holy
The
crap.
FBI doing something good? What's the agenda here?
I wouldn't consider this something good.
Now, this is astonishing to me because it does make one think, because if you look at some of the shenanigans that have gone on over the years, where the NSA has put experts, I'm doing air quotes, experts on committees for the IEEE and in the ACM working groups and things like that, who have intentionally weakened encryption standards to allow the NSA to be able to break them at a later date. And of course, anytime you weaken encryption so that the government can kind of check up on you, you're making it possible so that bad actors, foreign actors, and cyber criminals and other people can do it too.
Yep.
because we don't have a monopoly on smart hackers here in the United States. So in general, nobody outside of certain parts of the government think this is a good idea. And one does kind of wonder if they bothered to actually close down all the back doors on their way out, or if they left themselves a way back in.
Okay, that's what I naturally assumed, that they would close the door on their way out. But
One would hope, but a
but
lot of
you never know.
yeah, I mean, staying out of the culture of this for a moment, and I know Skep already knows this, but these servers are basically, you load a Windows server on there, and then you load a package that acts as an email server, and there's a bunch of stuff that's integrated in with all sorts of databases for your customers and your card key systems and all that other nonsense. And these things get set up often by people who are not full-time experts in this particular thing. And so bugs will come along and they won't get patched. And it sounds like I'm making fun of these people. I'm not, because it's really like a full-time job for often more than one person just to keep up with all the patching that needs to happen on these servers, because they're just porous.
Yeah.
And
most
also
organizations
patching them is
don't want to spin that.
It can be very complicated to patch these things, because sometimes the patches interact with other pieces of software that may or may not be running on the servers. And so sometimes you have to do things in a particular order. Sometimes you have to check and make sure that some other piece of software has received patch number blah 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 blah. Make sure that that's up and has been configured thusly. 5 pages of crap that, parameters that you have to check on that piece of software. Then go back, then you can apply that patch. And sometimes that'll be a patch that other patches are dependent upon. Anyway, it goes on and on. As Harry says, it can be a full-time job.
But let me clue you guys in on a little secret about the way this works. Companies like Microsoft basically are involved in this reciprocal reach around with their consultants. So what happens is Microsoft produces things that are almost impossible for anybody who isn't one of their highly trained, approved consultants to manage. And then those consultants get their certifications. They are able to get better jobs because of those certifications. They get better salaries because of those certifications. And when it comes time to ask the local expert what they should do, the answer is always give Microsoft more money. So and this same thing happens with companies like Cisco, with Juniper, Salesforce. I mean, you can just go down the line of all the companies that do this sort of stuff. And some companies are more about this sort of business model than others. But
Oracle,
anytime,
excuse me.
Oh yes, sorry, I forgot about Oracle. But yeah, this is how IT stuff sort of works, And when the guy in charge says, "Well, get me one of those, Microsoft certified guys in here, because I'm tired of having malware being dumped onto our systems because our mail server's crap."
That's why you're getting malwares, because the MCSE hasn't worked on it. Yeah.
Exactly. But I won't belabor the point, but it's just frustrating to me. I find this seems like a really bad precedent. No matter how well-intentioned, this seems like a really bad idea.
Oh, yeah.
Or is it just me?
Well, it also seems like it's a cover for, let's get into these company servers and see what they're talking about. Like, that's what this seems like. It's actually a cover for. Like, oh, yeah, no, you had the hole in your software. Like, oh, boy. And then just, like, what did they say? Like, that's what it feels like. Whoopsies. And it's just...
Well, given, okay, we go back to Patriot Act and the stuff that Richard Snowden was talking about. A lot of the backbones for these internet connections that connect all these different sites were going through a small number of interchanges. And they were siphoning off, without proper court authorization, all kinds of data that was being sent over the broader internet. They were intercepting packets and looking at all kinds of email without any kind of warrants whatsoever.
Right.
And all they really did was say, well, you're not really a real American if you object to this. I mean, I don't know if everybody remembers how all this went down.
Oh, yeah.
But the internet is a little less topologically set up for that sort of thing now. I mean, it used to be there were just a handful of little nexes that the stuff went through. Like there was May West and May East, and it's a little harder to do now than it was. But
you mean the internet's not for porn?
Yeah, most of the traffic that gets sent between sites is at least sort of weakly encrypted, including email now. But that's not the kind of encryption that it's not the kind of encryption that will really stop the government if they're motivated.
Yeah, no, like I figure, because I don't figure they're like, it's like with anything, if you're properly motivated, you can crack almost anything. If you have a connection and so on and so forth. It's just like, this just seems like the kind of shit someone would say of like, I need to spray. It's kind of like watching the cop TV shows where they're like, I'm from Terminex and I need to spray for termites, and they put bugs through the house, like listening bugs and stuff. Like that's what this feels like. Like it feels like, oh, I didn't know your server got compromised. Let me fix that for you. Put their own little back doors in and listening devices in. Oh, it's good now. Like that's just what it feels like.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that.
It's like we're fixing it for you without you asking us. Woohoo! It's like,
Well, I'm sort of curious in terms of chat goes, because this is one of these things I could talk about for a very long time. Are there any questions in chat about what we're talking about, or comments?
I mean, other than Assassin of the Grey saying, wait, they have one security problem?
Well, I did say they have what are called day zero problems, meaning problems that don't have a patch available yet. It's like they find out about the vulnerability, they attach it. But in terms of the security problems, it starts with the fact that they're running Microsoft Exchange server, as far as I'm concerned. That would be security problem number one.
No. But yeah, no, that seems to be the big thing. And then Jenna agreed with Gray, and that's about the last thing I'm seeing. But my chat could be fucked up. So because YouTube's been a bitch.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, but did you have anything you wanted to say, Skep? You're being very good about not saying anything. I appreciate it. But
I was trying to let other people get their say in. The principal problem, as you said, Harry, is using Microsoft Exchange Server, which architecturally is backward, and really Microsoft Windows Server is not a great server solution. It just has so many security holes in it, and has and will continue to. And they busily patch things and have their swarms of certified professionals going out and doing this and doing that. But they never seem to address the central, a lot of the basic problems. And we don't need to get into the technical part of this, but there's some basic things wrong with the way that Windows is organized effectively. And as long as those vulnerabilities exist, it will be very hard to do anything about the applications that sit on top of that and have the ties into the operating system that they have. And that's all I'll say about that.
Well, there are things that I could say that are positive about Windows, but like I said, I really think it's mostly just that people buy into an ecosystem. And, it's sort of like the old days. You'd say, well, I bought Blue. If you gave money to IBM, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM equipment.
Yeah.
And that was a thing that people said for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And in terms of like the Windows stuff, typically nobody gets fired for buying Windows. It's very expensive, but there just are so many things like that, and a lot of the modern IT stuff. I mean, there's certainly ways to fix it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea that somebody gave the FBI the authority to break into people's servers. Whether it's a white hat thing or not, it almost doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just the principle of this is bad. Now, I could see them contacting the people and saying, look, your server's been compromised. You can fix it, or if you want, we'll fix it for you. And then, but if you're not going to fix this thing, you should disconnect it from the network.
They should have had a court order, I believe.
Yeah.
They did have a court order.
And
But they
not
just
just a warrant, an actual order from a court to do this.
Court
Well, it says it was
authorized
court
operation.
authorized.
Yeah, that's why I think it's a warrant. That sounds like a warrant to me, and that's not the same as an order. I think that to take action on this scale against other people's property like this on any number of different entities, that's the thing about a warrant. A warrant is for somebody, or some entity, or to be directed against a finite group of entities that are related somehow. Uh, what we're talking about here is an effort that almost has no precedent that I can think of in law. I wish Prospero was here. Can you, Harry?
I can't think of another precedent for something like this.
I've
And
never heard of
certainly
anything
the
like this.
the sheer number of these things. Are you telling me that judge was given a list of several hundred or several thousand specific websites and the names of the owners and authorized this, or whether it was just sort of one of those?
He has
go
to
the
make a
FISA
judgment. He has
Right,
to
just
make
sort
a
of go to the
judgment
FISA
about
court.
each one of those companies to abrogate their rights, to have the court order their rights to effectively become.
Well, I mean, who knows who is on that list? There could be
Yeah.
all sorts of things on that list. Law firms, there could be all sorts of things on there where it could be extremely thorny from a legal perspective.
Or do
And
they
that
have
judge should be aware of what every single one of those warrants is. They should not get a writ of carte blanche to just white hat hack their way into hundreds of thousands of servers.
exactly if there's a judge somewhere who signed a piece of paper, gave it to the FBI, and says, "Do what you fellas think you need to do in this regard," that's a huge problem. That is a gigantic problem that goes far, far beyond this particular situation.
And I can see that being likely, like with them going, "Oh my God, we've got this foreign data breach. We need to do something right away." Blah 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 blah, and just sign off on this blank check basically to go.
Let me
what
make
they need to.
let me make it a little more
Scary.
immediate for you.
Hmm.
A judge signs a piece of paper, gives it to the FBI, and says, "You and local and include local law enforcement units with you. Break into whoever's house you want to and look for guns that haven't been registered properly." That's effective. That's not different from this. If that's the kind of warrant that was signed, if a
Unlawful search and
warrant,
seizure is unlawful search and seizure, no matter what medium.
I realize that. If
Oh,
this
yeah,
is
I know.
a do whatever you need to do to whomever you need to do it, that's
terrifying. That should scare people.
Yeah, that's real police state stuff. Sorry, Harry, didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. I'm just solving people's computer problems while you guys talk. So, no, that's true. Now, the bigger issue here, since we have a few minutes before we need to pivot, is the courts do a terrible job of dealing with technology.
Yeah.
When technology, any kind of technology, intersects with the law, it's a huge problem. And because what you're essentially asking judges to do and jurors to do is make rulings on things which it's almost unreasonable to expect them to understand. Now,
And in a
the
lot of
judge,
cases,
course,
there's no precedent, really.
Well, the judge in this case, it's a little clearer than some of them. The judge is simply looking at the law as it stands in terms of searches and things. Now, it doesn't mean that they search these machines. You could actually apply this patch in a very automated sort of way that never forces you to touch a mailbox at all. And maybe that was part of what was included here. But it's still, if anybody else had done this, it would still be a crime. And the fact that they were doing it under cover of government authority is the only thing that was going to keep them from being in jail for a long time.
Harry, the thing says the FBI has executed a court-authorized operation to remove malicious backdoor web shells from hundreds of Microsoft Exchange email servers targeted in the recent spate of attacks. Hundreds. You can't do due diligence on hundreds of companies.
No.
I mean, would they have 2,000 agents work on this for 3 years to get this warrant cut? No.
Yes, I'm aware. And the other trouble is that it's just, I'm not feeling particularly charitable toward the government in terms of trusting them not to overstep their bounds.
I'm not sweetness and light myself.
Yeah. I mean, at the lowest level, some law enforcement person checking up on their ex-wife or their ex-girlfriend all the way up to this top level where, oh, well, while we're in there, we might as well poke around. Leave ourselves a back door for the next time we need in. Because they're probably going to get hacked again. And how can we make sure that they're not being hacked unless we allow ourselves a way in to see if they're getting hacked?
And as long as we're doing that, let's just put in a little spy cam sort of thing, just to, look for some, key strings going through, and just to see if there's anything we need to, be alert to for national security, of course.
Like wrong think.
Yeah, or wrong think.
Well, I'm breaking my own rule about speculating about stuff like this because I don't like to just sort of spread rumors about things and send out unfounded allegations. It took me a while. I'm still having trouble believing this is a thing that anybody signed off on.
Yeah,
it is too bad that Prospero is. It's kind of bad that Prospero isn't here because this is just terrible.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. On to the next problem.
Space.
No.
The final frontier.
We have another article.
Oh,
These are the stories.
Semi-fulfilling prophecy. Ongoing chip shortage is now impacting chip-making equipment. So, as if it wasn't bad enough, everybody out there who's trying to buy a new gaming rig or a new GPU card or pretty much anything is waiting for all of these fantastic products to show up. We've talked about this before. But what's happening is the chip shortage is so bad that the equipment to make more chips is starting to become backlogged. Do you want to read this functional? Like the stuff that's above this picture?
Sure, and yeah. It seems like, yeah. And I mean, this is something that we've kind of been following for a little while now. It seems like every day the ongoing semiconductor chip shortage continues to get worse. For example, yesterday they wrote that the Taiwan Semiconductor was now warning that the company Taiwan Semiconductor was now warning that the global chip shortage may extend into next year, following comments they reported on in early April suggesting that prices would rise for the rest of 2021. The issue looks to be shifting to a shortage of chip-making equipment, according to Nikkei. Delivery times for some chip-making tools have grown to 12 months or more as a result of the supply crunch now spreading, quote, so far that is rebounding onto the chip-making industry itself, unquote, the report says. At least 4 types of vital production equipment are in short supply, the report says. One industry insider said, quote, some of these equipment makers are also suffering from chip shortages, not ship shortages, and some are struggling with labor issues due to pandemic lockdowns. Thank you, like all the other tech players. And that weighs on the process of building machines, end quote, said one of the people with direct knowledge of the situation. While wire bonding machines are experiencing a lead time of 10 to 12 months, they are used in the chip packaging process. Lead times for wafer dicing machines could be as long as 5 to 8 months, compared to the usual 1 to 3 months. The same people said. Mitsubishi Electric warned that lead times for laser drilling machines on printed circuit boards and chip substrates, I don't know why I can't pronounce chip today, is more than 12 months.
Yeah. So let me give you the breakdown on what the hell we're talking about here. To make a semiconductor involves a lot of moving parts. It involves a lot of very, very scary chemicals. It involves power systems. It involves refrigeration systems. It involves all kinds of fun tech involving like X-ray lithography and other techniques, vapor deposition, just like he was talking about the wire machines, getting those leads that come off of the CPU so you can actually stick it in the motherboard is a big deal. All of this stuff adds up. And there's also things like perfluorinated elastomers, which are used for the O-rings in these giant machines that run these processes. Going down in the article, they talk about, I think they quote Lam Research and who is the other one? SMIC. Yeah, I mean, this affects a lot of different manufacturers. Lam Research is a Silicon Valley company. This is a huge deal. When you write the dystopian novel about how would society survive if everything went to shit, and you go, oh, we can still build computers. Well, maybe you can't. This is basically showing that the supply chain is massively screwed up.
on many
because
different
we
vectors.
can't scale demand for semiconductors because there just isn't the equipment to meet the current demand. We have the know-how to build these amazing things like the AMD Ryzen processors and the new NVIDIA graphics cards, but we just can't make them fast enough to keep up with even the demand that we have right now.
The
with the
ever-growing
economy
demand.
as crappy as it is.
Yeah.
You know,
And like I was
we're
saying,
not
like so
seeing
many
any-
different vectors in making just one type of chip. If you're waiting for one of those machines in the manufacturing process, nothing's getting made. It's not like they can, oh, well, we'll just, put this, and this part on it, and then we'll wait until we get the next machine to get this part on, and then we can send it down. No, they can't do that.
Well, there's a certain amount of substitutability. So, like, if you were getting a giant O-ring, you could, and you wanted to get CalRes, you could decide that I can't get CalRes, I'll use ChemRas, an equivalent product from a different company. Don't come at me, O-ring people. So the point being, you can do that, but in terms of the fundamental ways in which these circuit boards are made, in terms of how the wafers are fabricated and all other sort of stuff, there really isn't a lot of substitution. You can't just change from X-ray lithography to some other technique. There's only one way you can make a chip that's 7 nanometer
Right.
Resolution. You need something with an extremely short wavelength, which is why you have to use X-rays instead of light. They used to do this with light, but that's the wavelengths of light are actually quite a bit larger than the junctions of the transistors in these gaming systems that we all have.
They're Chungus compared to Bugs Bunny.
They're mega chungus. The old ones are very chungus.
Yeah, that's why computers have gotten smaller. We've refined our technique into using X-rays.
So, anybody else? Anybody have any questions about this? I'm sorry, I'm talking so much here. I'm just sort of the natural one to talk about this.
I'm
The
just
com-
glad that got my computer last year. When you hear
Yes.
about stuff like this, I'm sorry, Ellen and
I'm
Talik.
so glad. I'm so glad that I bought Intel stock because I anticipated that the janky old 14 nanometer chips would be the only thing people could get for a long time. And Intel stock has been very, very good to me.
The thing that I would say about this, and it's kind of a left field comment a bit, and we don't need to spur out here and go here, but in the event of a Mad Max apocalypse, post-apocalyptic America, I think we would be lucky, and I truly mean this, I think we would be lucky to live roughly at the level that we lived at in 1925. Because
I would
so
think
much,
more like 1960, but I'm not. We're only disagreeing on the date.
yeah, it's same principle, and I think we would be back in the regions of having to refigure out a lot of this stuff. Now, the good news is we do have the information, but there's a lot of engineering that has to be done, and there's some lost arts that would have to be rediscovered. Anyway, so just making the comment, this is a very fragile, highly specialized, enormously complicated beyond my ability to convey how complicated it is, set of technologies that Harry's talking about. And when there's a supply chain problem with that, sometimes there are no other substitutes, and that becomes something that literally stops the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that could happen.
Yeah, if China were to actually take some sort of action against Taiwan, it will be very, very bad.
Yeah, you'll go through a period where effectively only the military will have computers.
I guess it really depends on what takeover means or what the action looks like. Because I could easily see something a little softer where they basically moved in. Do not make the joke you're thinking of.
They'll Hong Kong it. That's what they'll do.
Yeah,
They'll come in and
exactly.
say,
And-
we're not really here to invade. What we're going to do is, we're all Chinese here. We love you. We want you to love us. So we're going to make this really favorable deal, and it will and it'll be a 50-year deal. So all of you'll be dead when the shit comes down. And you know what? There may be enough people in Taiwan who will make that deal.
Yeah, I hope that unlike since we were very prophetic last week, that's not something that happens within 24 hours.
No, knock wood.
Yeah, no kidding.
You talk about your stocks falling out of bed, Harry.
Yeah, no, that's not a good thing. So do you want to talk about space now before I start crying?
It is the final frontier.
Yeah. The Starship Enterprise.
Pigs in space.
Jews in space.
Oy vey.
Okay, so
Oh, what's
SpaceX has again won another big contract in terms of our
Yay.
mission to go back to the moon. And
Yeah.
yeah, and largely, so essentially they've been getting all these contracts from NASA to get stuff into low Earth orbit to the space station.
Yeah.
They won a bunch of contracts recently to get stuff to the Lunar Gateway, which is the station they're going to use for the ongoing exploration of the moon, which may be more about finance and measuring penis size and other things, because a lot of it seems like people are not going to be paying a lot of attention to the moon treaty, and that the moon isn't going to be not be misused for military or industrial purposes. I think there's going to be a big rush to go back to the moon.
Oh, yeah.
For a lot of those reasons. And some of it's just going to be posturing, but I think long term there really are economic reasons why we need to not just sit back and wait for the Chinese in particular just to plant flags all over the damn thing.
Yep.
But yeah, so they got the contract to get things to the Midway station, basically the relay station, for the missions that are going to go to the moon. And now it looks like they have the contract to develop the human landing system, which is kind of huge. So that big, stupid Starship that keeps blowing up, as they try to perfect landing the thing vertically so they can reuse it. I think they're on, their 11th test now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are.
And so far they're getting closer to figuring out how to land this thing on its tail, but they're not there yet.
Yeah,
But
they
yeah,
actually
this
got
is-
it to
this is
land.
huge.
They just
I
need
think,
to
I
put-
think it was the 10. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Functional.
I was just going to make a joke. They just need to build a giant bouncy castle on the moon. It'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is that 10 actually, I think it was 10, actually did land, settled, did very nicely, and sadly, because of an unrelated problem, caught on fire and melted some of the substructure, and the thing fell over and exploded. But it actually did land successfully.
Well, the Starship that they're working on, in a lot of ways, as a lunar lander, it's almost massively over-spec'd. I mean, this thing is supposed to basically take a fairly large number of people and equipment to Mars. For a lunar mission, this is almost...
Overkill.
it's overkill. It's like going
Really
after mosquitoes with a flamethrower.
But
Assuming they
damn
get
it,
the whole
it's
thing
fun
to
when you
work.
do that.
No,
Yeah,
I mean,
the
this is pretty amazing.
One of the side stories in all this has been the failure of Boeing again and again and again. And as they got farther and farther behind, they put less and less effort into it until finally Boeing is pretty much out of the deal.
Mhm.
As they should be.
Yeah, and Jeff Bezos' company is out of the deal too.
Oh yeah, Blue Origin. God, Jeff Bezos has to be pissed right now.
Didn't David Hogg also want to have...
He was doing a renewable,
Space pillow.
socially responsible space pillow, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, we could use the space pillows on the moon to catch the rocket.
Well, let me just read a little of this article here. The winner of NASA's Human Landing System contract award is SpaceX, which bid $2.9 billion with a B for the privilege of developing the means by which NASA astronauts will return to the lunar surface for the first time since the Apollo program. SpaceX was in the running beside Blue Origin and Dynetics, but reportedly undercut both of these prospective suppliers considerably with its bid, according to the Washington Post. SpaceX proposed using its Starship spacecraft, currently under development, as the landing vehicle for astronauts once they arrive at their lunar destination. The HLS is a key part of NASA's Artemis program, which will begin with uncrewed flights, followed by a moon flyby with a human crew, and eventually a human lunar landing at the south pole of the moon, during a mission which had been targeted 2024 as its fly date. Would anybody other than Skep like to guess why we would be landing on the south pole of the moon?
Because the North Pole's already claimed.
Good one. Anybody else?
You'll fall off if you land on the north side
'Cause
because it's
it
on the
doesn't matter.
bottom.
Functional. You want to take a stab at this?
Come on, functional.
I know I'm going all Socratic method on you guys, but this is a really easy. This
We're
is
not
actually
really
easy if you
working
think
with
about
you,
it.
are we?
Well,
It's the
you have
point
to know a
facing
key.
Earth.
You have to know a key piece of information about the South Pole.
That's where the water is.
That's where they found the water.
Ah.
Yes.
There's
It's
water
so-
on the moon? Where have I been?
Yes. It's
Oh, yeah.
underneath the surface.
I knew about the water part. I knew that.
Yeah, because once you find the water, long term,
Then
it
you
makes
get the
so many
power.
things easier.
Then you
well,
get
you
the
basically
women.
you take the water and you can use it to make fuel. You can use it to make oxygen. You can use it to do all sorts of things.
Mhm. And we can also study it.
And we can also study it. Because in theory, if you were going to be launching regular missions to, say, the asteroid belts or Mars, putting a fuel production facility on the moon would solve a lot of problems, because with the
Makes so
lower
much
gravity,
sense.
that would be basically where you would produce the fuel and, top off the tanks on things that were going to head out further into the solar system.
Mhm.
So the moon effectively becomes a gas station
Yeah, it's a
for
way
things
station.
that we would do later.
And we really want to get to the belt.
I really need to finish The Expanse. I started watching it and then I just sort of got out of the habit. It looks
so
like a pretty
good.
good show.
So-
Has anybody watched it all the way through?
Oh, yeah.
If you guys would say that'd be functional.
Okay.
I don't even know what it is.
It's
Hard
a-
sci-fi.
Yeah, it's based on a book series. The book series is really good.
But it has, I mean, it's based in sort of a hard sci-fi world, but there's
Mhm.
still stuff, extrasolar stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really well written. The acting, the production value is mwah. And earlier seasons they had a lot less to work with financially.
And they still
But
did
as
real
they
well.
they did really well. Looks fucking fantastic. We're not talking Star Trek TNG season 1 to season 2 production value. It even with such a shorter, smaller production value, it kept that brilliant look to it. But not to get too far off topic. Because I mentioned the belt because we kind of already know that it's rich with minerals, and we need these minerals to keep going further and further out, and to help build more cool stuff here at home. And if America and the coalition there
Fuck yeah.
makes their first claims onto some of these mineral rich parts of the belt, that could enrich the coffers quite a bit. Keep those
So let
pesky
me-
Chicoms at bay.
Let me well, since we have a little bit of time here on the schedule, let me do something fun here. Let's tie this back to the previous discussion we were having. So the Chinese mine a bunch of gold, right? But the main thing that the Chinese now gold, other than the fact that it is has a certain amount of commercial value, because it's actually incredibly useful for a number of things, like making semiconductors. The gold is one thing, but they also mine a good chunk of the Earth's rare earths. So the things that the super strong magnets that are used in smart bombs are made out of, we buy from the Chinese now. Because what they did was they started mining a whole bunch of this stuff, and then they started developing the infrastructure to refine it into refined rare earth metals, like neodymium, things like that. And they sold it at such a cheap price that the producers in the United States, where we actually have a fair amount of this stuff, just stopped refining it. And there was no impetus to basically
It was cheaper to buy it than it was to keep manufacturing.
It's
refining,
cheaper to buy a lot. And as
Mhm.
Skep was saying, again, tying something back to something we already talked about, the knowledge of how to do that, the practical knowledge of how to do that. We have the book knowledge, but there aren't a lot of people in the U.S. that know on a practical level how one would go about setting up a facility to mine these things. And these are the types of metals that are available in abundance in the asteroids.
Yes.
Yipperino.
Yes.
Now, people talk about, oh, well, if they had this one asteroid, it's worth, umpteen quadrillion dollars. Well, it wouldn't be if you had that much of the material, because it would no longer be
You
scarce.
change the market.
Yeah.
You would change the market. So that part is kind of dumb. But there are things on Earth which we actually don't have a huge amount of. And if we got space flight down to the point where it was relatively cheap, or we were going to use those things in space rather than taking them all the way back to Earth and then launching them again, the asteroid belt would be a great place to get a lot of the things that we need. If we have water,
Can you imagine going up and finding a cliff of palladium?
I can imagine that.
Me too. It's fun. Sorry, I just had to go there.
Well, I mean, the thing is like, considering all the stuff that's also needed to make the batteries for a lot of these electrical cars that a lot of these states, like California, want to be implemented by a certain year and get rid of gasoline, we have to get to space and we have to get mining. They have the specific metal types because the
we
planet just
can
doesn't
use-
have it.
Well, there are other battery chemistries that people are working on that are a lot less exotic in terms of the metals that we use.
I know, but still, it's one of those things like they talk about wanting to save the environment, and one of the ways to do that would be stop mining our own damn planet and start mining other resources. And that's kind of, this fits into their more green earth environmental thing. If they also kind of back it with, so we kind of need to get to space. I think it should be something that everybody can agree on. We need to get to space. No matter what.
Whether we do it to humiliate our opponents, whether
Yeah.
we do it for science, whether we do it just for glory, or whether we do it for economics,
Or all
I'm
of
in
the
favor
above.
of it.
all of the
Just
above.
pick any one of those reasons is reason enough from my perspective to want
Oh,
to
yeah.
do this. And I personally do not want to live on an asteroid. That
No.
sounds terrible. And I think that a lot of the grittiness of the Expanse is actually pretty refreshing, because
Yeah.
everybody wants to think that anything involving space is going to be sexy.
Nope.
I would not
gonna
want
be
to
Star
be
Trek,
the
no.
space. I would not want to be the space janitor on the International Space Station or any space station. Space toilet number 5 is clogged again. Okay, it's your job to go deal with this. There's
or
a lot
worse
of
still, somebody who has to work in the treatment plant.
Ugh.
Well, look at how nasty cruise ships are, and now imagine this
Yeah.
tube that's been in space that hasn't had fresh air blowing through it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Blech.
I would not want to go to the International Space Station. I wouldn't mind going to space, but I don't want to live in a tube
Yeah,
circling
Again,
in
in
low Earth
space.
orbit.
I want to visit. I don't want to live there.
I
Exactly.
understand the ISS. I didn't talk to this astronaut. My sister, who was house sitting for this astronaut while she was doing her months on the ISS, was a college roommate of my sister. And she said the ISS has a very peculiar smell to it. It's not a nice smell. But she said by the time that she left, she was completely acclimated to it.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it's that
Yeah.
homeless stank, not that sexy sex stank.
Well, I mean,
If
it's
you've
like-
ever been aboard a submarine, and I have, a working submarine, one that actually, it
Was crewed
is
and-
work, crewed, and just came in from a deployment. They stink.
Mm-mm.
You can't believe that people get used to that, but the bubbleheads, the people who are on submarines, they're all just like, yeah, no problem,
Yeah.
And the fast attack boats are even worse than the boomers.
Yeah, I can imagine, but they actually get to surface occasionally.
Yeah,
and
they get
Yes,
to
they
air
do.
out.
people leave.
Yep.
It's not like on the ISS you can open a window.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
it's like,
You can try.
Kind of,
yeah, you can open the
Kinda
window,
makes
y'all
you-
gonna die, but you
kind of
open
makes
the
you
window.
empathize with T'Pol and Porthos, eh, Skep?
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
people with very heightened olfactory
You don't have
senses.
to, you don't have to
senses.
explain the joke. It always ruins it if you do that.
Yeah,
Of course, there's
okay.
probably like only a few of us who've actually watched Enterprise.
Right.
I'm explaining to the chat. Like,
Yeah. I know.
Anyway, moving on.
Anyway, moving on. So a couple. Okay.
my body, my
How
choice,
to-
Harry.
Well, when I pick these articles, it's not necessarily about the articles. It's about the discussion around the articles, right?
Let's
Because
face
in the
facts.
big scheme of things, I don't care one bit about this, but it brings up the bigger question of what do you do when you're a partisan and the people on your side are idiots in public?
What's wrong with your
Um,
face?
That's things.
Resting
and
bitch face.
stuff. Sora, would you be willing to read this?
Sure. Let me and begin you.
If you want to read from your own, you have the link. If you want to read from that,
Do
that's
I?
fine. Or if you want to read from the screen, yeah, it was in the PDF.
Is this the Marjorie Taylor Greene thing?
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
PDF.
Okay. Oh my God.
Hold on. Where's the PDF?
Way.
I can put the link in the private chat.
Can you put a link in the private chat?
Yeah. I'll
I think I can manage
start.
that.
I'll actually start it off and just tell you that it's about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, and they are the lone votes against the reauthorizing bill to help leukemia patients. Now that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Conservative representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia and Lauren Boebert of Colorado were the only two House members to vote against a bill that would reauthorize the National Marrow Donor Program. Just let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah.
The bill, H.R. 941, or the Transplant Act, overwhelmingly passed the House in a 415-2 vote on Thursday night. There were 12 lawmakers who didn't cast a vote. The bill would
Cowards.
reauthorize a program that matches bone marrow donors and cord blood units with patients who have leukemia and other diseases. The bill would help thousands of people diagnosed with leukemia and other diseases by reauthorizing the National Marrow Donor Program and the National Cord Blood Inventory for another 5 years. Boebert said in a statement to CNN, this bill added hundreds of millions of dollars to the national debt while not receiving a CBO score or going through the committee process, a reference to scoring done by the Congressional Budget Office, the agency that, among other things, tells lawmakers how much legislation will cost. And Greene, who often makes outlandish claims to seek headlines, claimed that nothing in this bill prevents the funding of aborted fetal tissues by taxpayers. The program keeps an inventory of cord blood and a database of bone marrow donors for matches for patients diagnosed with leukemia and other fatal blood diseases, certain kinds of anemia and whatnot, and is not related to the fetal tissue argument raised by the very clueless Greene or the argument raised by Boebert. In response to the false claims by Greene, the National Marrow Donor Program said in a statement, National Marrow Program, the match does not use fetal tissue embryonic stem cells for transplant research. For more than 30 years, the match has helped facilitate more than 105,000 transplants for patients battling blood cancers and blood diseases. We only use cells voluntarily donated by either an adult donor or cells collected from the umbilical cord, which occurs only after a full-term delivery where both mother and baby are healthy and safe. There is a companion bill in the Senate that is still in committee. So these two geniuses decided they would vote against one of the only parts of government that is really truly worthwhile. And they did it for the simple expedient of gaining headlines to show how concerned they are that abortions are happening, and abortion is evil, and they're proving their conservative purity. They are conservative SJWs effectively. And
Virtue over here, virtue.
Yep, that's basically what it is. So we've got, well, it's not just about proving their purity. It's not just a litmus test to see whether they're proper religious conservatives. It's also a public expression of pure stupidity. Because
Yes, because they're wrong. Both of them
If-
are wrong in different
if
ways.
it was just ideology, I could almost deal with it, because partisans be partisan, or the partisans got a partisan, but
Sure.
but this is just wrong. And as far as the thing about fetal tissue for medical treatments, sort of likening it to something that Joseph Mengele would have done. We now have pluripotent stem cells, meaning we can make stem cells from the blood of adults, from the tissues of adults that exactly match your own tissue. They're not even from somebody else. We've achieved that particular sort of holy grail. We have to figure out how to use them more effectively, but that's like a huge development. And Sanguine will go on about that a lot because it's one of his favorite topics to talk about. But he's not here, so I had to say something. These
reaction.
people are just nitwits, both of them.
It's
To be-
scary and terrifying when people that either refuse to learn anything about medicine, refuse to listen to the people who trying to tell them about science and medicine are in charge of passing laws that will help keep people alive. Like these charming ladies. Good job.
Well, the only thing I have to say is, Assassin, do you have a list of what the runaway pork is attached to the bill? Because that's what you're saying in chat, that it was runaway pork, but
Well, this is a
Well,
CNN article, so we expect a certain amount of.
well, yeah, no, I agree, but I was wondering if Assassin had a list of what the pork was. Like,
Here,
yeah,
let me
Is
simplify
that a
things.
euphemism for something?
Hold on. Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that he's right,
yeah,
and that it's part of a larger bill with a whole bunch of pork.
No, there
It
are
doesn't
zero
really matter.
amendments. I'm looking at it. right now. I'm looking at the bill. 0 amendments. There is no pork on this. This was.
But even
a
if there
straight-
were, it doesn't matter because it's the
Yep.
it's the statements these people are making
Yeah.
that we're talking about, right?
Mhm.
But thank you
Yeah.
for looking that up, Skep.
You're welcome.
But the point being that what do you do when people in your camp, if you're a partisan, and I don't really consider myself to be a partisan, what do you do about people like this in your own camp when you want to have like a big tent party and you're looking, because these are allies on a lot of issues. There are a lot of things these women agree with that probably many people in the chat agree with. They are not usually saying things quite this stupid, but this is just like when Nathan Fillion starts talking about solar freaking roadways. It's like, just shut up.
Freaking
Nathan.
roadways.
Just shut
Take
your
them
mouth and
aside and tell
Look pretty.
them
yeah, go look
Look,
pretty,
be
honey.
pretty.
if you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, just shut the hell up.
Yeah, so
Like you can
no,
still
this
vote
is a
that way,
serious-
but just zip it.
Well, this is a serious question. So functional. What would you do if you were like, say, the minority whip, and it was your job to make these women vote the way they're supposed to? I had to be really careful about how I phrase that.
Yeah,
well, like I
Whip
was
these
just
women to
saying,
rape.
in all seriousness, yes, to have an aside and be like, look, I don't care if you want to vote against this shit for whatever stupid reason, and obviously I would phrase it a little bit more eloquently and diplomatically, but at least keep your mouth shut afterwards. Or why, if it's something this crazy and this provably, and if it's something you don't know what you're talking about, and obviously this is not just something particular to this case, but in a lot of cases where these representatives don't even read the fucking bill, and Skep just did. Skep said no pork. So, I mean, how hard can it be for one of these dumb broads to have a look at the actual bill?
I'm imagining what Monkey would say right now, and I want to stop doing that. It's not terribly hard. Serenity, do you have an opinion about this?
And Bobert's
No,
kind of
it's
cute
just-
when she
I-
does her gun stuff.
that was just
Yeah.
a thing I was curious. Like, since Assassin said something, I was like, all right, well, I mean, that could be it, but then they should have brought up the pork thing instead of sticking foot inside mouth.
If the pork thing is even a thing.
Yeah, which Skep said it's not. So
The
it's one of
entire
those-
bill, the entire text of the bill, which has 0 amendments, which is what you look for. I go to congress.gov and then I know how to
Yeah.
drill down and get to the HR stuff. And this thing is, it's not even 2 pages long. It's a page and a half long. And it basically just says, reauthorize this stuff for this act, period, dot, end of thing, end of thing.
Yeah,
I could bore you with the actual text, but it just, it's really short. It truly is about uh, a half a half probably about a page of double spaced typewriting.
yeah, and that's
Tiny girl brains.
but that's the thing is like if they're basically like I wonder if they're coming up for re-election here pretty soon or something like that, because it's like why open your mouth? Why just vote against it, walk away?
Well, the House of Representatives are basically almost perpetually up for re-election. They're not, their term is not that long.
Yeah, it's 2 years, and so they're they go into re-election mode the day after the celebration.
They are constantly campaigning.
Yeah,
but it's like one of those things with that they can say that, but and it's like, are there uneducated people on both sides when it comes to bills and stuff like that? Yes. But it's like anybody would be like, well, I mean, how bad could the port, like if they think what Assassin did, or which is what everybody does. And I'm not saying you were wrong for thinking that, Assassin. It's just, if the knee-jerk reaction of the Republican side is to think, oh, there's pork on it. And if they're like, well, I wonder what the pork was. And they look it up and they see that it's 2 pages. There's no amendments. There's no pork. And they're like, you stupid bitches. What the hell? You're in my district. I'm not voting for you this time. It's that kind of stuff where it's kind of like this, just keeping the mouth shut would have saved them a little bit of
They could have just chose to not vote like the other 12.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, or just abstain or whatever. And
abstain is not vote. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing of like, you pick the wrong hill to die on, that kind of moment. This is the wrong hill to die on. It's like, this is not the one you want to pick to do this shit.
Well, the point about the GAO assessment, which is the Assassin of the Grey is talking about, if there is a rule that all of these bills have to have that and they violated the rules, they could have just made an objection based on that.
Yeah.
And there are people whose job it is to enforce procedure. I don't think things are quite as tight in the House as they are in the Senate.
Yeah.
But you can't just go around breaking the rules all the time.
Yeah.
You can change the rules, but you can't necessarily just break them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, well, if there's something in there, they then object to it. If there's pork in it, then state the pork. Just don't sit there and say, oh, it's about abortion.
Just a quick comment about that, Harry. The House of Representatives has something that the Senate effectively does not have, and that is a Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House, who comes from the majority party, has an enormous amount of influence and ability to literally change the process, sometimes on the fly. And if she wants something, if she wants a bill to come out of committee and go to the floor, she just gestures at them, and it's done. It is DONE done. Those committee chairmen are utterly puppets under the Speaker of the House. That's not true in the Senate. In the Senate, it's the committee heads who really tend to have the majority, which all come from the majority party, all really have a lot more relative power. They are not really puppets of anybody, and the president pro tempore of the Senate is really designed in as more of an administrator, a guy who makes sure that they go into session on time and the meetings happen in the right order.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it when, especially Boebert starts triggering the hell out of other people in Congress. I enjoy
she's
that.
Being an idiot on this one.
But she's being an idiot on this one. I mean, there aren't a whole lot of things that the government does that a lot of people are on board with. And we all have our list. We all want roads. Well, not all. Most people want roads. I kind of like the SEC because I think having financial markets you can have some level of trust in is a good thing. And I got into a fight with AA about that. Good times. Let's see. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it was one of those things we just sort of disagreed about. But things like orphan drugs, where there are drugs that can help people, but they're not commercially viable because there are just so few people that actually need them. Those types of things where they're relatively cheap to produce, but there's just no financial incentive, and they can save tens of thousands of lives. Yeah, fine, we can make some orphan drugs. Not a big deal, and stuff like this is relatively easy.
Yeah,
and that's why I mean, how many votes do you see in the House that pass 415 to 2.
The two. But here's what there's what appears to be going on, and then there's what's really going on. And what's really going on is these two women were saying to their base, "We're one of you. We are so different from the rest of Washington. We are like you." That really was what all this was about. Trust me when I tell you, even though Boebert is arguably a little bit crazy, and so is Green for that matter, they're both smart enough women to know how out of bounds this was, what nonsense this was, and they did it for that reason. They probably even talked about this. This was a way to appeal to their base. Period. Dot. That's all this was.
Quick question that if there's a quick answer, but why is this to reauthor? Like, what stopped the National Marrow Program before? Or is this just like a renewal?
It runs out of money, and so it has to have access to an appropriation, and that's what this does.
Oh, okay. So it is just kind of like a renewal.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Keep it going. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
The other answer to your question is 42.
Right.
Hopefully, with the advances in science,
Metric
this won't be necessary in another 5 years.
Yes. Right.
It would be much better if we could just pull some of the patient's own bone marrow, culture it, regrow it, re-inject it after whatever the treatment is that basically destroys all that. Because if you have bone cancer, in most cases, your only hope of surviving
is a bone marrow transplant.
Is first to basically wipe out all the bone marrow in your body.
Right.
And without that, you will die. And if something isn't basically put back in there to grow back, you will just die. You'll just die more slowly. So this is life or death for just about anybody who has metastatic cancer. Even if you can solve the other thing, if it's stage 3 or stage 4 and it's metastasized into the bone marrow, this is the difference between life or death.
Exactly. Right.
Okay, question, because Architect of Fate is speaking in chat. And they're saying that the bill's a one-page total text. It references 11 other legislations that legalize fetal research. It's not, and then they, because I don't know what they are, goes on to say it's not a damn renewal. It's a reauthorized fetal stem cell research from donor pools.
Okay, I'm going to read to you from the goddamn bill.
It's necessary. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
This is in what he's talking about is Section 5. Subsection 1, point B. Okay, so this is an overview of the current employment levels in both commercial and academic settings for positions in the field of regenerative medicine using adult stem cells and related to product development. Okay, and then the other part is in subsection 4B of that same paragraph, the field of regenerative medicine using adult stem cells. I read the whole thing. So this is an overview of the availability of training programs related to the development, refinement, utilization of adult stem cells, including training on manufacturing practices for such activities and the performance of such activities, and the field of regenerative medicine using adult stem cells. Those are the only string occurrences of stem cells in the bill's text.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was talking about. Sanguine's pet favorite topic, pluripotent stem cells.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're just better. There's no reason to use the fetal tissue, full stop. There's zero reason to use it. Nobody wants to use it. You don't need it. You don't want it.
This is
because you
this
still
is not
have to deal
growing
with rejection
fetuses
and other things.
This is not growing fetuses to harvest stem cells. And anybody who says that it is engaging in what must be regarded as willful disinformation, and I don't appreciate it.
Yeah, not like we're full of trust for the government. Just look at what we were saying about them fixing those servers.
I'm as libertarian as anybody, but I'm rational about it. And look, this is what the thing says: adult stem cells.
I just think it's hilarious that I started saying libertarian things, and my friend Sergeant Sniper showed up in the chat. Like, do you have an alert set up or something?
Jenna asks, haven't they been using adult stem cells for years now?
Yes, they have.
Well, the means to really practically use these adult stem cells have matured a lot in the last few years.
Yep.
And again, this is one of these things where if you're really interested in this, go on the Wednesday chat, put something in there. The Wednesday show, put something in chat for Sanguine, and he will tell you everything you never wanted to hear about pluripotent
For as
stem
long
cells.
as you want to listen.
He can go for the full 2 hours.
Yeah.
We do not need to cover that here tonight.
So moving right along.
So moving right along. No, but it's just that these are essentially the AOCs of the right.
Yeah.
You know, and what do you do with people like this? It is
Pretty
a
much
good question because
would-
I honestly don't know the answer
take
because
'em-
you need all the allies you can get.
You take them
But at the same
behind the
time, they
woodshed.
make you look bad.
You take them behind the woodshed, and you let the gun handle it. That's what you do.
No.
Learn.
We only dry fire our guns at minions of the zoo.
Okay. So anyway, moving
So,
on.
what is toxic productivity?
Oh,
Here's
God.
how to spot the damaging behavior. Now, Huffington Post is just a perpetual lolcow.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
And so I
Brittany
kind of
Wong.
wanted to end on this
Something
this
Wong.
article. Hey, Sora. Oh, wait,
Yes.
Sora's moved away.
Sure.
Yes,
So if I send you the link to this, do you want to read this one?
sure.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Sora. I didn't
okay.
even think about that.
No.
It was super short. I
Yeah.
thought you were
No,
still
it's-
introducing it and it was over.
Yep. It's fine. You were just keeping the show moving. I appreciate it. Oh, wait. It helps if I, instead of putting it in my browser, actually send it in private chat.
Whichever works for you.
Oh, she's
No,
such a.
I'm a little loopy because I got my second shot. And
How are you feeling,
in
by the way?
Discord? I'm actually feeling like I'm on the border of the world's worst headache. Really tired. Got the chills. I did text. Well, I think in Discord I sent a number of people the message saying I love. The first time I got the first shot, I said I love Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and then I think the second one I said I didn't think it was possible, but I love them even more now. And I almost thought I'd put in a note about how much I like Fauci, but I decided that was pushing the joke.
You should have just called
past
it the
breaking
Fauci
point.
ouchie.
Yeah.
Ouchie.
Yeah, one of my friends called me that, and I started laughing. They're like, "Yeah, it's amazing, isn't?" I was like, "I'm laughing, but not for the reason you think."
All right. You should have the link, Sora. It's in the private
Okay.
chat there.
And
So
I
if you wouldn't, and if you feel like it reaches a natural stopping point, you don't think it needs to be read further, I trust your judgment. Please proceed.
okay, and that's all you need to know. Okay. All right. What is toxic productivity? Here's how to spot the damaging behavior the pandemic has convinced us we have to be at all times. Here's what that mentality looks like and how to deal with it by Brittany Wong. This is a very American sentimentality, I feel like. It's not, I don't know about it being super Canadian, but okay, let's talk.
She's from LA, and oh boy.
Think about your work ethic during the pandemic. Have you been more productive than usual? Do you rush to volunteer for projects at work, even when your plate is already full? Do you promise to make dinner as soon as you finish one last thing on your to-do list? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you might be suffering from toxic productivity. What, you ask? Sorry. How can productivity, that time-honored marker of success, be toxic? We're here to explain.
What you say?
I hate this person. I just don't like how it's
So
written.
white.
In
She's got
many ways,
something wrong.
in many ways, toxic productivity is just a buzzy new term for workaholism, but it's also a little more nuanced than the old school phrase. Toxic
always
productivity is essentially an unhealthy desire to be productive at all times, at all costs. It's the need to go the extra mile at work or at home, even when it's not expected of you. Toxic productivity doesn't even let up once the task is complete. Once you're technically done with a project at work, you might feel guilty for not having done more. For the afflicted, too much is never enough, said Simone Milasas, a business coach and author of Joy of Business. Toxic productivity can make us feel like a failure if we're not constantly doing, she told HuffPo. When toxic productivity is leading your life, you judge yourself every day for what you haven't done rather than looking at what you have accomplished. That's interesting. Okay. Many of us have fallen into patterns of toxic productivity during the pandemic, said Catherine Esquire, a psychologist and founder of the the Teletherapist Network. Sorry, it's
That's basically the Teletherapist Network is probably hosted in a room next door to Ask Miss
To
Cleo.
Miss Cleo.
It's not Tella
Yeah.
the rapist.
That's what you almost said, wasn't it?
Network.
So you almost said, Sora, that's why you had to stop yourself.
Okay, it's my fault. We shouldn't break
It
Sora
was
when
one
she's
of
trying
those-
to read.
Sorry.
Well, it's one of the word broke me. 'Cause I was reading fine, and it my brain caught up with what I was seeing. That's primarily because all of our regular routines are put on pause. All of a sudden, we had unprecedented amounts of free time. But why did we throw ourselves into work instead of seizing the opportunity to be blissfully, guiltlessly idle for once? I don't know. Why didn't you? Because that was fine.
Because she's a journalist.
Because at the time we all felt an acute, pressing sense of uncertainty. We were in unknown territory during those early days of the pandemic. But for those of us who hadn't been laid off, at least we still had our work. Becoming a virtual work martyr gave people a welcome sense of security. We could have used our free time to rest, recharge, and restore ourselves, but many of us filled those hours with more work as a way to feel worthy, fulfilled, and in control, as Cor said. Sort of like a survivor's guilt, it feels like, for having a job versus those who lost theirs. We didn't stop once the workday ended either. We told ourselves we'd learn a new language, become an expert baker, or master some other skill we'd put off learning in the before times. As one virtual productivity pushing tweet put it, if you don't come out of this quarantine with either 1, a new skill, 2, starting what you've been putting off, like a new business, 3, more knowledge, then you didn't ever lack the time, you lacked the discipline.
Now, let me interject. In this pandemic, I've been streaming the whole time, and I have on many occasions said that this is exactly what you should do. I'm like the poster child for everything she thinks is wrong with the world.
This tweet particularly is not. There's nothing really wrong with this tweet. It's actually pretty good because you can. It's not to say that you need to start now for the next. You work 8 hours and you have to study 8 hours for something new. It's just like, pick up something new. You can do things that you felt like you didn't have time to before or whatever. Sure. It's nothing really wrong. I don't consider this toxic per se.
No, it's not toxic. She's an idiot.
But it's only if that's what you said you wanted to do would be my caveat. It would be like if you decided, hey, I want to try to do all this, but nothing comes about it, then that would be a lack of discipline. If you're like, I'm just going to live my life because that's how I don't lose my mind, like by just living it how I had before as best as possible and nothing new really happens, then whatever, you kept your routine as best as you could. It's not necessarily bad. I don't know. Let's see. All right. Talk about unforgiving. As HuffPost senior work life reporter Monica Torres put it early in the pandemic, hustle culture never stops, quarantine or not. Ugh, I hate that term. There's precedent for this. Relentlessly working in times of uncertainty is about as American as apple pie. Work culture in the U.S. valorizes the grind, and in moments of crisis, we grind all the harder. Look at World War II and the vast, rapid expansion of U.S. civil manufacturing capacity to meet wartime demands. See, this is very American. I don't know. Now, if there's any other Canadians, correct me if I'm wrong. This doesn't feel something that we experience up here.
You're too
as much.
European.
Sounds like I'm chill. I don't know why you guys are all running around like chickens with your heads cut off. Breathe.
No,
How many weeks of vacation do you guys get state mandated? I mean, it is a very different culture, but that's just exactly. And exactly. You guys are practically French.
Whoa.
You guys
back that ass up.
You guys have been going through the article. I have been over on the Teletherapist Network website.
Oh, so I did the same thing, Skep. I was like, oh, let me look at this shit.
Is it lovely? Is it wonderful?
It's like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, it's an MLM. That's what it looks like. Multi-level marketing.
Do you even get like a bottle of Brain Force or something from Alex Jones?
Well, essentially, it's founded by the most Karen-esque Karen I have ever witnessed. And this pushy,
Oh,
hi,
Jesus.
I'm an MBA graduate with an member of the American Psychological Association, and I felt very isolated, so I started this thing. And for $67 a month, we will sell you all this stuff. This is a $400 value. This is a $500 value. This is a $1,000 value. Bring your friends, and if you bring a friend, you can get money off of this, or even make money on your own. I actually went into the application process. It's astounding. $67 every month. Cancel anytime. Oh my God! And it's just selling constantly. Their little sales bubbles come up all over the place if you don't have them suppressed.
Well, let me ask you: Are they selling any supplements or aromatherapy stuff?
No. This is
Yeah.
any
Book club.
CBD oil.
This is
Healing
all
crystals.
this is all head stuff. This is all
Okay.
courses, master classes. That looks like the big seller, and those are $500 a pop. And for $500, you get like a 9-day view of here's what our opinion is about how to approach this kind of a thing. Every single person, every single photograph is of a young white or Asian woman. There are no there are no fat black women on there. They're all attractive white and Asian women. It's absolutely strange. It's a very strange website.
Oh, and
I should make a master class. My
Yes,
master
you
class is going to be entitled "The Mute Button Doesn't Block Your Camera."
Yeah, but they actually do the EMDR shit
The
too.
tubening.
They, for those who don't know what EMDR is, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Okay.
It's basically where they it came out in the 80s, late 80s, I think. And basically you recall distressing images, and they like watch your eye movement and all this kind of stuff to kind of like fix
I remember this shit.
Yeah, like that's what it is. Like it's literally sit there and stare at somebody. It's it's psychotherapy.
Okay. All right.
But anyway,
I have to do what I'm about to do here.
Do it.
Hold on. Just
Do
bear
it.
with me for a moment.
For
Doing
the
a
dark
picture.
times before the
Let's see.
empire.
But yeah, this is an MLM, Skep. You're right. This is hardcore. Like it's even in the colors. It's in those soft
Is it like
mauve.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, it's that mixed with only
Basically.
fans.
Actually, you're supposed to shut. Yeah.
Okay. Let's. I mean, this is dumb. I don't know if we have to listen to any more of this brain
No.
damage. But
The thing-
go ahead, Sora.
What I was going to say is that the idea has merit, because they're basically saying, hey, all this instability that's been happening? Well, guess what? People have issues with that. And they might also have, be going through depression and other issues. Wow, what a concept. Of course, people are going to have issues. You're not seeing your friends.
Yeah.
You might, for work, you might be living a state or a province away, and you're so used to being able to go fairly frequently, whether driving or flying, to see them. But now, nope, you're not going to see them. And that person that you have what seems to be very close, but now so far away, is ailing, and elderly, and now you can't go and help them. Of course, people are going to try to hone in on something that they feel has stability in their life, which in this case is work, and why they're just going, on the hamster wheel and everything. It's normal. People used to do this prior to the pandemic, because it's like and I'm sorry to bring this up, it's like an ED. They find an aspect of their life that they can, or they believe that they have control over, and they like super manage it, right? And they put all their energy or their power into it. And if anything goes a little bit wrong, it's the end of their lives, or at least that's what it feels like it, because you put all of this mental energy and your work and your passion into it, or whatever or what you think is your passion, because it feels like it's the most staple part.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, now let's add toxicity to it, and that there's a term that has been used in conjunction to some very, very, very negative, dumb things, and you've just, instead of helping people, really, you're kind of making them like, oh shit, there's something terribly wrong with me that's bad, because that's usually used in connotation to really nasty things, like cancelable things nowadays. Ugh, I hate this.
Well, she even brings up the term workaholics,
Yeah.
workaholism. And I mean, yeah, sure, that is a thing. There are people who sacrifice health and family and relationships because they're just obsessed with. But the way that she's describing some of these notions, it's not workaholism. And she's trying to repackage it, rebrand it, and put a pretty bow on it and send it out there
Yeah,
so she
you're
can
not wrong.
sell something.
Mhm.
But what she's describing isn't that. It's people. She's basically describing people who have lost a lot of their daily routine and are now looking to do other things to fill the time, to have some sense of normalcy. I get that as somebody who's been removed from the workforce for quite a while. Like that need for some not only just the regiment, but at the end of the day, say, hey, I did something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether
I
it's
can
with
tell
my
you-
hands or my brain or whatever, I did something.
Well, it's been a year. And so what she's essentially saying, when she could just say, sort of like Aristotle or Buddha, take the middle path. Having a healthy work-life balance. Nobody's suggesting you shouldn't have a healthy work-life balance. But to say that you have this bad thing that happens, but it gives you an opportunity to do something that you've never had the time to do, and that you should do something. Maybe a year's going to go by and you might be a slightly better version of yourself than you were going into it. Because what's the alternative? Being 25 pounds heavier and not learning a goddamn thing?
Yeah.
What is it that you're suggesting? You ignorant. Anyway, I can.
I'm with you,
so
Eric.
there
I'm
are
Typical
people.
HuffPo pull-up.
I have this on fairly good authority that what's going on right now at Google is they are, and a lot of companies like Google, is they're paying very close attention to the amount of work people are getting done from home. And what's starting to happen now is people are getting in a position where it's time to start considering going back to work. Some people want to work part-time from the office. Some people want to go back to the office full-time. In general, the way it breaks down with most of the samples I've seen, it's about 25% want full-time, 50% want a hybrid situation, and 25% would want to work directly from home the whole time. Now, of these, and this influences a lot of things like how you set up the workplace environment, whether you have shared workspaces, desks, cubicles, you just grab a laptop from a storage locker where you keep your stuff. That how you lay out the office matters depending on what the work pattern looks like. It influences everything in terms of the cafeteria, the commute schedule, all of it. There's huge implications for what this actually means. But if you're claiming that you want to work from home and they go back and they look and see that you really didn't get nearly as much done during the pandemic as you did otherwise, there isn't going to be an excuse in the world that's going to save you. What you're going to basically be offered is a lead parachute to get the hell out of there when you say you're not willing to go back to the office. And people need to start taking this shit seriously because we're in for bad financial times and people are going to get cut. And if you're just a lazy piece of crap, you're going to be one of those people. Sorry, I didn't mean to end on such a down note.
Well, the other thing is there's some people who cannot lose their jobs anymore. How do you fire a person of color who is not arrested and in jail?
Well, without getting us kicked
I know.
off of YouTube, there are going to be people who are unfireable, unflushable, however you want to describe it. And those people are going to be hired and paid, and nobody's going to expect that they get much work done.
Yep.
They're just there to satisfy some sort of quota. So it'd be like in the UK where they had a shadow government, so there'll be the person actually doing the work and then the person, pretending to do the work.
Right.
That's just my theory.
Kind of the abotopotamus, is it Diane
Yes,
Abbott
exactly.
kind of thing? Yeah.
So does anybody have any final thoughts before we wrap this up? Because we're at a little over the 2-hour mark and it is time to go.
I have a small benediction, just
Please.
to end on, but I want it to be the final words. So does anybody want to go before me?
I got a couple quotes.
Okay, go ahead.
We're born alone, we live alone, we die alone. Only through our love and friendship can we create the illusion for the moment that we're not alone. Where did I put the other one? Ask not what you can do for your country, ask what's for lunch. And finally, if there hadn't been women, we'd still be squatting in a cave eating raw meat because we made civilization in order to impress our girlfriends. And those were, of course, from someone we talked about last week, Mr. Orson Welles.
Orson Welles, right?
Who's
Well,
always
also,
good
we
for
would
a
have never
laugh.
been born, but yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Leaving aside that one thorny issue. All right, anybody else before we get to Skep?
I'm good.
I'm good too.
All right, go ahead, Skep.
All right. You know, by the data to date, there's only one animal in the galaxy who is dangerous to man, and that is man himself. So he must supply his own indispensable competition. He has no enemy to assist him. And remember that there's no conclusive evidence of life after death, but there's no evidence of any sort against it. Soon enough, you will know. So why fret about it? And those are from the Notebooks of Lazarus Long from Robert A. Heinlein.
Mm. I need to find my illustrated notebooks of Lazarus Long.
Yes.
I know I've got it around here somewhere. I just don't know which box full of books from my childhood it's in.
Yep.
Anyway, it has been my pleasure to be your host tonight. I really appreciate my guests and chat. You guys have been on fire again.
Thank you, Harry.
Really good show. Really good
thank
show.
you for
Thank
hosting.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
And with that, the zoo is closed. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Joel on True.